Have you ever wondered how a single, unplanned moment of bravery could not only change the course of someone's life, but also set off a chain of events that none of us could ever expect? Imagine a young boy, just 10 years old, facing a world that is quick to judge him based on his appearance, yet he still chooses to act. When he notices a stranger in danger, he does not hesitate. A simple, life-changing act, one that seems so small at first, leads to a future neither he nor the stranger could have ever predicted. What happens when that courageous decision alters everything, opening doors to opportunities and challenges that would have never appeared without that instant of action? It is a bright afternoon in the bustling heart of the city, the streets alive with the hum of daily activity. People rush past, lost in their routines, while cars zoom by in a blur of motion. Amid the chaos, a 10-year-old black boy, Marcus, walks home after school, clutching his schoolbooks tightly in his hands. He navigates the crowded sidewalk, dodging pedestrians and taking in the sounds of the city. With each step, he feels the weight of the day lift, his body already anticipating the comfort of home. Marcus is just like any other kid. He's focused on his day, maybe wondering what's for dinner, or thinking about a game he played at school. His worn sneakers tap against the pavement in rhythm with his thoughts, his pace steady as he moves through the sea of busy strangers. Across the street, a white man in a sharp business suit is oblivious to the danger ahead of him. He's walking briskly, his head down, his attention fully absorbed in a phone call. His steps are measured and quick, not aware that the world around him is moving faster than he realizes. The man's phone call is the only thing occupying his mind as he steps forward into the busy intersection. From behind him, Marcus spots a speeding car that's quickly losing control, barreling straight for the suited man. Time seems to slow, and every instinct in Marcus's body tells him to act. But there is no time to think. Without a second thought, his legs carry him forward as fast as they can go. The car is getting closer, its engine roaring, its tires screeching against the pavement. The suited man remains unaware, his back still turned, lost in the world of his phone conversation. Marcus's heart beats faster, each step a blur as he covers the distance between himself and the man. In a split second, just as the car is almost upon them, Marcus reaches the man. With all his strength, he grabs the man's arm, yanking him back with an urgency beyond his years. The man stumbles back, his phone dropping to the ground, and just as the car swerves dangerously close, Marcus pulls him further out of harm's way. The screech of the car's tires fills the air as it misses them by inches, its driver barely regaining control. The chaos of the moment fades, and Marcus stands there catching his breath, the world suddenly quieter. The man, now shaken and disoriented, looks at Marcus with wide eyes, disbelief and confusion written on his face. "What just happened?" the man mutters, his voice still a bit shaky. He looks down at Marcus, who stands calm and composed, but with a glimmer of exhaustion and adrenaline in his young eyes. Marcus doesn't say much. There is no need for words. He simply knows he did what had to be done. The man stares at Marcus for a long moment, unsure of what to say next. In the span of those few seconds, everything has changed, not just for the man, but for Marcus as well. Little does the young boy know that single act of bravery will set off a chain of events, forever altering the course of his life. What began as an instinctive decision on a bustling street is now the beginning of a story neither of them could ever have imagined. Marcus, though only 10 years old, is no stranger to life's difficulties. Growing up in a rough neighborhood, he's learned to navigate the challenges of the world around him, growing street smart and resourceful. His family, though not wealthy, has always emphasized the importance of kindness and compassion, even when the world around them doesn't seem to show much of either. His mother, a hard-working woman who always does her best to provide, raised Marcus with love and the belief that doing the right thing is more important than anything else. Marcus may not have much, but he's always been willing to help others. Whether it's offering assistance to a neighbor, helping his friends with their homework, or even standing up for a classmate, Marcus always does what he can to make things better, even if it's just in small ways. His community knows him as a good-hearted kid, someone who stands out for the way he treats others despite the hardships he faces. His aspirations are simple. He dreams of being able to help his family live a better life, hoping for a future where he can give back to his community and make a lasting difference. Today, as he walks home from school, Marcus has no idea that his routine is about to change. He's not thinking about the struggles of his day or the uncertainty of his future. Instead, he's thinking about how he can help his mom make dinner, how to finish his schoolwork, and how much he looks forward to the weekend. Little does he know, that simple decision to rush toward the man in danger will forever alter his life's trajectory. But helping others is what he does. It's who he is. The man walking toward the crosswalk, dressed sharply in a business suit, is nothing like Marcus. His life has been shaped by wealth and privilege. He works in a high-rise building downtown, in a prestigious office, and has always been focused on his career, rarely giving much thought to the world outside his immediate circle. To him, success has always been a given, something he believes can be attained through hard work and dedication, but not necessarily by understanding the struggles of those around him. His days are filled with meetings, deadlines, and tasks that are far removed from the daily battles faced by people living in lower-income neighborhoods. He knows little of the hardships that young boys like Marcus face, and even less about the challenges of growing up in a world filled with prejudice. The man's life is one of predictability and order, framed by the belief that he has earned every bit of his success. As he walks down the street, his phone glued to his ear, he is oblivious to the dangers that lie just ahead. He's too absorbed in his call, too focused on the deals he's closing, to notice the speeding car racing toward him. His mind is elsewhere, on things that seem important in the world he inhabits, but completely unaware of the world that surrounds him. He's never had to consider the lives of others in the same way that Marcus does. What he doesn't know is that his life, his trajectory, is about to collide with Marcus's in a way that will shatter the walls of privilege and bring them face to face with each other, though neither can yet see how important this moment is going to be. In that instant, when the speeding car comes into view and Marcus rushes toward him to pull him out of harm's way, the man is suddenly thrust into a reality that he's never had to confront. He had no idea, but the boy he barely noticed was the one who saved him, a child from a completely different world. This unexpected encounter, this brief moment, will not just change the course of the boy's life, but will challenge the man's view of the world forever. Little does he know, the act of kindness and courage that Marcus shows will soon open doors neither of them ever imagined. The boy's simple act of saving him from certain danger will lay the foundation for a new understanding, one that neither could have anticipated. As the car screeches to a halt, the tires locking in a desperate attempt to stop in time, the scene around Marcus seems to slow. His heart is still racing, and his hands tremble slightly from the adrenaline of the split-second decision he made. The crowd around him gasps in unison, some stepping back in shock, others simply staring. The sound of the car's screeching tires still echoes in the air, a harsh reminder of how close the danger came to being realized. The man, his suit now slightly wrinkled, stumbles back to his feet, clearly startled, but otherwise unharmed. He takes a moment to collect himself, brushing off his clothes as if they were the most pressing concern in that moment. The fact that his life was just spared seems lost on him, buried under the inconvenience of being pulled away from his phone call and his business dealings. He looks at Marcus briefly, his eyes cold and ungrateful. With a sharp, irritated glance, the man shoots the boy a look that communicates nothing but annoyance. It's a look that suggests he's been disturbed, that his busy, perfect day has been interrupted by an unscheduled act of heroism that he wasn't prepared for. Without uttering a single word of gratitude, the man turns on his heel and walks away. His phone call is still ongoing, and he seems more concerned about the disruption than the boy who just saved his life. He strides off with the confidence of someone who has always been in control, never stopping to even acknowledge the gesture that just saved him. The people around Marcus begin to murmur amongst themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief at how the man responded. Some wonder why he couldn't at least thank the boy for his efforts, but others simply stand in silence, unsure of what to make of the encounter. It's a moment that passes quickly, but it's one that will stick in the boy's mind for much longer. Marcus stands still for a moment, his body still tense from the rush of the moment. He watches the man walk away, disappearing into the crowd of pedestrians who have quickly resumed their own lives. The street is still busy, the rhythm of the city moving on as though nothing out of the ordinary has happened. Cars honk in the distance, people cross the street, and the world keeps turning, oblivious to the significance of what just occurred. For Marcus, however, the world feels different. His heart is still racing, and he takes a deep breath to steady himself. He looks down at his hands, still trembling from the effort of pulling the man out of harm's way. He's not sure what he was expecting, but it certainly wasn't this lack of acknowledgement, this silence that feels louder than any words of gratitude he could have received. But Marcus doesn't let it bother him for too long. He knows he did the right thing. He's helped someone, and that's enough. He was only trying to do the right thing, and he couldn't have known how it would turn out. Still, the fact that the man didn't even bother to thank him stings. In his young mind, Marcus can't fathom why anyone would be ungrateful for being saved from certain harm. But as he looks around at the crowd, some of the people are still watching him, some with approval in their eyes, others unsure. He feels like an invisible presence once more. The boy doesn't quite understand the full weight of what just happened. He was in the right place at the right time, and he did what he was taught to do, help those in need, regardless of the circumstances. It's just in his nature. But what he doesn't know is that his act of bravery, though small in his eyes, has set off a chain of events that will unfold in ways he never could have imagined. A chance encounter that, for the man, was an inconvenience, will change Marcus's life forever, and the lives of those around him. The crowd begins to disperse, and Marcus turns to walk away, his thoughts still tangled. The adrenaline is beginning to wear off, but there's a lingering feeling of unease inside him. He can't help but wonder why the man didn't even say thank you. His mother would always tell him that showing kindness to others is a form of strength, not weakness. But the more he thinks about it, the more confused he feels. As Marcus walks away, blending back into the rhythm of the street, he is unaware that his actions will soon become the focal point of a much larger story. The man, who was too wrapped up in his own world to recognize the gift of a second chance, will soon realize that the boy who saved him was more than just another random kid. Marcus's actions will eventually reach far beyond this moment, touching lives in ways he could never have anticipated. And, as the days unfold, the boy who once felt invisible will soon be seen by those who have the power to change everything. The days following the incident pass in a blur, but the image of the young boy pulling him out of harm's way lingers in the man's mind. He had initially brushed it off, thinking of it as just a random act of kindness from a stranger. However, as the day goes on, the more the man replays the event in his head, the more the sense of discomfort begins to grow. What struck him most was the boy's unflinching bravery, how, without hesitation, he dashed forward to save him without thinking twice about the danger. It was a selfless act, a moment of pure instinct, and yet the man had responded with nothing but irritation. He had been too absorbed in his own world, his phone call, and the hustle of the day to fully comprehend what had just occurred. He had dismissed the boy's actions, not out of malice, but from a place of arrogance. The boy was just another face in the crowd until that moment. The man finds himself thinking back to the boy's eyes, steady and calm, as he gripped him and pulled him away from the oncoming car. It was a look of compassion, of someone who simply wanted to help. The more the man reflects on it, the more it feels wrong that he had walked away without even a simple thank you. Over the next few days, the man's thoughts are consumed with guilt. Something about the boy's quiet strength nags at him. The more he thinks about it, the more he feels an unease about how he had treated the situation. After all, the boy had saved his life. His actions had been far more significant than just a random good deed, and yet the man had failed to acknowledge the gravity of the moment. It starts to bother him. Curiosity eventually gets the best of him, and the man decides to learn more about the boy. When he asks around, he quickly learns that the boy's family is not just another average household. They are well-known and highly respected members of the community. The boy's parents, he discovers, are part of a network of powerful business people who own several companies and philanthropic organizations. This revelation shakes the man, and the more he digs, the more it becomes clear that the boy is not just any child. He is part of something much bigger than he had ever imagined. Intrigued, the man learns that the boy is also an influential figure in his school, a leader among his peers in the student council. His reputation, even as a 10-year-old, extends beyond just his family's accomplishments. The boy's innate qualities, his integrity, his courage, his willingness to help others, are already being recognized by those around him. The man, who once thought of the boy as just another kid in a crowd, now sees him in a completely different light. As he reflects on this, the man begins to feel a deep sense of guilt. The boy had, in a moment of crisis, shown more grace, courage, and humility than the man had in years. The contrast between the boy's selfless actions and his own pride and entitlement is stark. He has spent his life in privilege, believing that he earned everything through hard work and perseverance. But this boy, this 10-year-old, was doing the kind of things the man had only ever read about in books or heard about in stories. The boy's modesty, his lack of ego, and his willingness to help a stranger in need highlighted the flaws in the man's own character. The man's discomfort deepens when he starts to wonder. How many times had he failed to recognize the value in others simply because of their status, race, or background? How many times had he dismissed people who were capable of far more than he had assumed? The boy's actions were a challenge to everything he had believed about worth, power, and status. And now, knowing the truth about the boy's background, the man realizes just how wrong he had been in not acknowledging the significance of the moment. With this newfound understanding, the man reaches out to the boy's family. He requests to meet them, hoping to apologize for his initial reaction. He realizes that by failing to express gratitude, he missed an opportunity to show respect and appreciation for a life-saving act. But when he meets the boy's parents, the man is struck by how much they already know about the situation. The boy's family doesn't need an apology. They've seen the good in their son all along. Instead, they encourage the man to be a part of something bigger, to use his position to support initiatives that help those who need it most. The man, humbled and ashamed of his earlier actions, starts to understand that the boy, with his quiet leadership and resilience, may one day rise to places of influence that far exceed his own. His initial dismissal of the boy was a mistake, but in a strange way, it becomes the catalyst for his own change. In the boy, he now sees a future leader, someone whose quiet courage and wisdom will shape the world in ways the man could never have imagined. And for the first time, the man wonders whether the boy might even one day be the one to change his own life. The businessman, now fully aware of the significance of the boy's actions, could not shake the feeling that his initial response had been completely wrong. What had been an instinctive act of self-preservation and arrogance had now turned into something that needed to be corrected. He had ignored the boy's bravery. But that was not going to be the case any longer. The businessman's change of heart was immediate, and he knew he needed to reach out to the family. After some time, he finally made the call. He set up a meeting with the boy's family, wanting to personally apologize for his initial reaction and, more importantly, to extend an offer. The meeting was not about charity or pity. It was about an opportunity. He recognized the boy's natural leadership qualities, his courage, and the selflessness he had shown when he pulled him out of the path of an oncoming car. He wanted to invest in this young man's future. This wasn't about simply rewarding the boy for doing the right thing. It was about recognizing the potential within him that no one else had seen, not even the businessman himself until now. When the boy, Derek, and his family were invited to meet with the businessman, they were unsure of what to expect. Derek, still oblivious to the depth of the man's change, walked into the office with no real sense of what had just unfolded in the wake of his quick thinking. He had helped someone in need, but to him, it was simply the right thing to do, and he never expected any reward. The businessman greeted them warmly, and it was clear from the start that he wanted more than just a conversation. He had a purpose. "I owe you an apology," the businessman began, his tone sincere. "When I first met you, I saw you as just another stranger in my way. I didn't understand who you were, or the courage it took to act when you did. But now, I see you for what you truly are, a young man with great potential. I would like to mentor you, to help you achieve your dreams. I believe in what you can do, and I want to make sure you have the resources to get there." Derek's eyes widened in disbelief. He didn't know what to say. Mentorship? Resources? This wasn't anything he had imagined when he had made that split-second decision to pull the businessman out of harm's way. He had simply wanted to help. Now, he was sitting in front of someone who had just turned his world upside down with an offer he never saw coming. As the conversation unfolded, the businessman explained that he had the means to connect Derek with the right people and the right opportunities. He offered to fund his education, provide him with access to valuable resources, and help him understand the business world. Derek's parents, initially just as surprised as he was, listened closely, understanding the gravity of the situation. They had always taught their son to dream big, to never let anyone's prejudice define who he was. But now, here was a chance for Derek to shape his own future with the help of someone who saw him for who he really was, not just a boy from a rough neighborhood, but a young man with the potential to make a lasting impact. Over time, Derek began to take full advantage of the opportunity. The businessman became his mentor in every sense of the word, introducing him to influential figures, guiding him through important decisions, and offering him the support he needed to grow. Derek's world expanded. He was now receiving an education that was once beyond his reach. He was meeting people who were eager to help him succeed, and for the first time in his life, he began to see that his dreams of success weren't just pipe dreams. They were within his grasp. As Derek's life began to change, so did his family's. With the businessman's help, Derek's parents were able to access resources that allowed them to improve their lives. His mother, who worked long hours to provide for him, was able to pursue her own business endeavors with the help of mentorship and business advice. Derek's family flourished as they gained access to the networks that had once seemed so out of reach. The community around them began to take notice. They saw Derek's story, how an act of kindness and courage had not only saved a life, but had changed the trajectory of his entire future. Derek became an inspiration, not just to other young people in his neighborhood, but to anyone who had ever felt limited by their circumstances. His story spread far beyond his community, and others began to see that kindness, humility, and bravery could open doors that were once closed. As Derek continued to thrive, he remained grounded in the values that had guided him from the beginning. He never forgot where he came from, nor did he ever forget the lesson he had learned in that moment when he saved the businessman's life. He knew that he had been given a gift, one that wasn't just about opportunity, but about the responsibility to help others when they needed it most. With the businessman's guidance, Derek became not just a student, but a young advocate for change. He used his platform to encourage others to pursue their dreams, regardless of their background, and to always take a stand when they see injustice. His mentorship and the opportunities he received gave him the power to create lasting change, not only for himself, but for others who had been overlooked, just as he once had been. This is the story of how a single moment of courage and selflessness can create a ripple effect that can change not just one life, but many others. The boy's life had changed in ways he could never have imagined. What had seemed like an insignificant moment, saving a stranger from an oncoming car, had become the defining point in his journey. The businessman, once a mere figure in the crowd, had now become a mentor, and opportunities that once seemed out of reach had suddenly appeared. For the boy, it was not just about the immediate result of saving someone's life. It was about the lessons he had learned along the way and the doors that had opened as a result of his actions. That afternoon, the boy had done what he thought was right without thinking of the consequences. He had acted purely on instinct, seeing a person in danger and deciding to help. His actions, however, led to something far greater than a simple act of kindness. He had impacted not only the life of the businessman, but had also set in motion a chain of events that would alter the course of his own future. The businessman, once indifferent and preoccupied with his own world, had been forced to see beyond his own biases. The boy's bravery, humility, and innate sense of goodness had shifted the businessman's perspective. He no longer viewed the boy through the lens of his own privilege and arrogance. Instead, he saw a young man with potential, someone who could rise above his circumstances and achieve greatness. In the weeks and months that followed, the boy began to feel the weight of the opportunities that had come his way. He enrolled in schools with better resources, met influential people who believed in his future, and received mentorship from the businessman who had once been a stranger. These opportunities were not handed to him lightly. They were earned by the simple act of courage and a heart willing to help a stranger. As the boy grew into his new role, he found himself reflecting on how everything had changed in such a short time. It wasn't just about the education or the resources. It was about the respect he had gained, the doors that had opened, and the way he had been able to stand tall despite the challenges he had faced growing up. His sense of pride and gratitude were evident as he took in the view of the city skyline one evening, thinking about all that lay ahead. He knew his journey was just beginning, but he also knew that it all started with one choice, one courageous decision. Looking back, he could hardly believe the path that had unfolded before him, all from a single act that was driven by instinct rather than calculation. In the final scene, as he stood there, his eyes on the horizon, he understood that the world was full of possibilities. What seemed like a small, fleeting moment could have lasting consequences. The businessman had given him more than just mentorship. He had given him the chance to prove that one decision could change everything. Sometimes, a single act of courage is all it takes to change everything, the boy thought, as a sense of fulfillment washed over him. He had made a difference in someone else's life, and in doing so, he had forever changed the trajectory of his own. His future was no longer uncertain. He had become the person he had always hoped to be, a person who had the power to shape his destiny and the world around him.